Next, Mr. Bock.
Got a question right here. Can you talk about the bond rating a little bit?
I can. It's probably a long answer. The bond rating is really a rating that an agency will give a municipality on the risk of default. So a higher bond rating means there's less risk of default and arguably lower interest rates for when you borrow. The problem is, if you read the entire S&P and the Moody's reports, what you'll find is that there's a concern on the amount of debt and the rate at which our debt is growing. But the ratings reports say that will be handled by the growth of residential growth in the county. It assumes that our population grows at about 30% over the next 20 years. If you look at, and those projections were made a couple of years ago, back when things were growing. Obviously, those projections are not there. So my concern is the revenue won't come in to handle the debt, and in fact, the debt rating doesn't mean that much. Keep in mind, these are the same agencies that rated Greece right before as an investment grade, right before they defaulted. They invested. They still have California, I believe, as investment grade bonds, and I doubt many of you would want to invest in California bonds. So there's lots of issues with that. And also another major issue is what they're looking at is general obligation bonds, where you go to the voter and you ask, is it okay to borrow for whatever cause? Since 2005, I believe, 100% of our voting, or of our new debt, has been done without voter approval. If that number reaches too high as a comparison to our general obligation debt, that is a serious red flag to the rating agencies. So short term, I applaud and we want a higher bond rating, obviously. Longer term, I think there's some issues. Okay.
Obviously, my priority is schools. I've never met you and I've never heard you speak, but I've been told by a lot of people that you wish to cut the budget by 20% across the board. Does that mean education?
I'm glad you asked the question, because that is out there. I, in fact, do not want to cut the budget by 20% across the board. What I say is I think there is room for reducing our expenditures, and I think we can do that at a nominal target of 5% a year for the next 3 or 4 years. So at 5 to 7% over 3 years, that's where that 20% number is coming from.
Including schools?
No, no.
I'm just asking.
No, that's the thing. I think that, can I answer the question?
Go ahead, go ahead.
By going through the budget process and changing to a zero-based budget and actually looking at and requiring the department heads to justify every expenditure, what we're going to be able to do there is identify wasteful and redundant programs. Right now, with an incremental-based budget, and most government agencies will use this, anything that was spent in a previous budget is automatically assumed to be justified in a current budget. The only things that need to be justified are increases to those budgets. And so what you don't do is identify things that you don't need to be doing anymore. So if you can identify the wasteful and the redundant areas, that gives us more money for those core functions that I said, which was number one, education. So I think that we can cut those types of things, go through the budget. And if I'm wrong, if we go through line by line by line, and we can't cut 5%, then I'll be the first to admit it. But our spending has increased by about 65% in the last 5 years. I think that we can cut 5%. If we don't do it across the board, we cut what needs to be cut.